This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. We're learning more today about the trans killer who murdered kids at a Catholic school in Minneapolis.
In short, the shooter appeared to hate all of us.
U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson says the killer left a mountain of clues that could help establish a motive.
The shooter idolized some of the most notorious school shooters and mass murderers in our country's history. I won't name them, just like I won't name the shooter. They don't deserve to have their names remembered.
The two shooting victims are being remembered, and their identities are now known. 8-year-old Fletcher Merkel and 10-year-old Harper Moisky, both shot dead in the pews they were sitting in during a Catholic mass. The parents of Harper Moisky releasing a statement saying, "Words cannot capture the depth of our pain." Fletcher Merkel's father spoke to the media yesterday.
Please remember Fletcher for the person he was and not the act that ended his life. Give your kids an extra hug and kiss today. We love you, Fletcher. You'll always be with us. 9
children are still in the hospital from Wednesday's shooting. This is the second mass shooting in as many years in this country involving trans killers who target students at Christian schools. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked about that during a news conference yesterday.
What kind of consequences do the gender-affirming therapists, doctors, or even the parents of these shooters face after these types of shootings?
HHS is investigating perhaps links between some of these drugs and these prescription drugs that some of these minors may be taking and an increase in violence.
The Minneapolis shooter worked at a marijuana dispensary, and drug addiction specialist Alex Berenson says while pot may not have caused this shooting, cannabis use disorders are real and they are growing.
Psychotic disorder, delusions, hallucinations are attributable to cannabis use, and I can point you to several of the highest profile mass shootings in the United States in which cannabis was found in the shooters' bodies.
The shooter's mother refusing to cooperate with authorities. She's hired an attorney and worked at the school where the shooting took place. The gunman was a former student there. Despite having a heart filled with hate, the child killer had no prior run-ins with the law. Back in 2018, cops did do a welfare check on his home for what they described as mental health reasons. Israel launching a new wave of attacks on Gaza City today as the IDF prepares to seize total control of the Palestinian territory. Correspondent Molly Hunter.
We are already seeing huge explosions east of Gaza City. No official calls for the evacuation of the estimated 1 million people who are still in the north of Gaza. The IDF is hitting a part of Gaza that an international hunger monitoring group has declared is already under a man-made famine. And back in Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu has said the IDF has recovered the bodies of 2 hostages. They believe there are still about 50 still inside Gaza, including 20 who are alive.
California Governor Gavin Newsom's deployed crime suppression teams to major cities in his state to help local police keep neighborhoods safe. These specialized law enforcement officers will be sent to cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco. The move comes as the mayor of Washington, D.C. now admits the presence of National Guard troops in her city has helped reduce carjackings by nearly 90%. Border czar Tom Homan's vowing to step up immigration enforcement efforts in several cities, including New York City and Chicago.
You can see a ramp up of operations in Chicago, absolutely. You're going to see a ramp up of operations in New York. You're going to see a ramp up of operations continue in LA. And, Portland, Seattle. I mean, all these sanctuary cities that refuse to work with ICE, where we know public safety threats are being released every day into this country, especially those cities, we're going to address that.
Homan says discussions are underway to turn a Navy base near Chicago into a hub for ICE. There were protests yesterday at the headquarters of the Centers for Disease Control. It had to do with the controversial firing of the CDC director. She was let go for butting heads with HHS Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. over vaccine policy. Former CDC Director Richard Besser.
What she said to me is that she had a couple lines in the sand. She said she would never do anything illegal and she would never do anything that ran counter to the science. And she said the secretary asked her to do both.
4 other CDC leaders resigned in protest. The Trump White House says it reserves the right to fire whomever it wants. Secretary Kennedy says the rush to vaccinate has replaced the need to evaluate in our healthcare system today. Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans 20 years ago today.
This is a once in probably a lifetime event.
Ray Nagin was the mayor of New Orleans when Katrina roared ashore. Former NBC anchorman Brian Williams had this to say about that storm when he went on the air August 29th, 2005.
And good evening from a battered and soaked city of New Orleans. And those windows on that high-rise building have the local people here saying it looks like a bomb went off downtown.
Del Frazier's a lifelong resident of New Orleans and says 2 decades after the storm, the impact of Katrina is still being felt.
It became so surreal. You just never thought. You just never, even to the day, 20 years later, it's just hard to fathom that we had that much water with that much devastation.
Nearly 1,900 people lost their lives as a result of Hurricane Katrina, the costliest natural disaster in U.S. history. The Labor Day travel rush is on. NBC's Priya Sridhar.
The TSA is estimating 17.4 million people will be passing through their checkpoints over this extended holiday period, which they're counting from yesterday to Wednesday of next week. But today is actually going to be the busiest day with 3 million passengers. So if you do have a flight booked today, expect to see a lot of people here at the airport.
Travel expert Mark Murphy says if you're driving to your Labor Day destination, there are several smartphone apps available to help you avoid the crush of holiday traffic.
I really like the Waze app, which is owned by Google. It's a great map app that it's crowdsourced so you can see where the delays are. You can obviously get rerouted around those delays. And at the same time, if you're going a little too fast, they also will give you a little bit of a heads up if there's some speed traps ahead this weekend, because that could ruin your weekend as well.
The price at the pump this Labor Day is the lowest it's been since 2020. This end of summer getaway caps off what travel experts say has been the busiest summer travel season in about a decade. Still to come on the Noon Report for Friday, are Christian schools being shortchanged when it comes to security? Wingfest happens this weekend in where else? Buffalo. And what a night for Kyle Schwarber. Randy will have that story in sports coming up.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. The Labor Day weekend is upon us. On balance, it looks very nice and sunny, but it does start on the cool side. Forecast details are up in 10.
All right, Kevin, we'll see you then. New York State Police are out and about cracking down on dangerous drivers this weekend. Motorists will notice extra patrols as part of the Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over campaign. It runs through Monday. Last year, more than 20,000 tickets were issued during that stepped-up law enforcement effort. The Christian school shooting in Minnesota this week is prompting local faith-based institutions to double down on security.
We've done a variety of things to try and reduce as much as is possible the risk of something like that happening here.
That's Chris Johnson, founder and principal of the Cornerstone Christian Academy in Brockport, New York.
Truth is, there are no buildings that are impenetrable.
Johnson says all the security in the world won't make up for not having an armed guard on site. Right now, they don't have one, and it's not feasible because the school can't afford it.
I'd have to pay them at least twice what I pay any of my teachers or myself.
Jim Coltrera is co-chair of the New York State Coalition for Independent and Religious Schools.
No school is immune to violence, and our heart goes out regardless of where it happens, what community it happens to. But at the same time, I'm a public policy advocate. It gets me fired up to ensure that lawmakers are also doing everything they can.
He says Christian schools need more support from Albany when it comes to funding school security. Pennsylvania school districts are feeling the pinch from the state budget impasse in Harrisburg. The spending plan is 2 months late. Dr. Keith Miles, the superintendent of the Lancaster School District.
Let me be blunt. We're running out of time.
Many school districts are now borrowing money to pay their bills. Others are holding off on hiring much-needed staff or have had to dip into their reserves. Sandy Edling works for a school district near Philadelphia.
The longer this impasse goes on, the more permanent harm is done to the programs and children that need them the most. Let's not allow political gridlock to derail our children's future.
Pennsylvania's 500 school districts were supposed to receive $2 billion from the state yesterday. That did not happen, and there's no word on when the educational cash will be doled out in the absence of a state budget. The New York DEC is investigating a large fish kill in Ishua Creek in the town of Franklinville, Cattaraugus County. It was caused by organic waste discharge. Health officials are urging folks to avoid fishing, boating, or swimming in that creek until further notice. So far, there's been no impact to the public drinking water. Big changes are coming to one Pennsylvania regional airport. Family Life's Brian Query.
The Clearfield Jefferson Regional Authority has accepted more than $3 million in federal grants to help fund a major runway rehabilitation project at Du Bois Regional Airport. The airport's main runway has not been resurfaced in 25 years, and officials say it will be fully repaved and repainted. Assistant Manager Kathy Blake says the work will require closing the airport for 2 weekends, with half of the runway completed each time. Construction is scheduled for spring of 2026 to avoid delays from cold weather. Brian Query, Family Life News.
All right, thank you, Brian. It might feel a bit early to be talking fall crops, but Carbon County pumpkin farmer Ryan Wentz says it is harvest season in Pennsylvania.
It's definitely fall for us right now, regardless of what the calendar says, and I think people are kind of ready. It's a little bit cooler weather coming up. Early spring, we had a decent amount of rain, which helped, knowing that at some point we're going to get into a very dry situation, which is we're in right now. But the pumpkins handle that pretty well.
Wentz has 3,000 pumpkins on his farm. He also grows Christmas trees, but they're not ready just yet. The signature dish that put Buffalo on the culinary map takes center stage this weekend at Salin Field in the Queen City. 15 tons of chicken wings will be consumed during this year's National Buffalo Wing Festival. Over 100 styles of wings from 20 area restaurants will be competing for the title of Best Chicken Wing in Buffalo, the birthplace of the chicken wing. Festival founder Drew the Wing King Surza tells WGRZ,
it's a chance for them to come to the Super Bowl, Buffalo, New York, to showcase and compete and see what they got. And we've got 63 new styles of wing sauces, and they all tie in their own regional flavors.
Wing Fest is Saturday from 11 until 8, and again Sunday from 11 until 6. Sports next. It's the 2-minute drill on Family Life.
21 times. Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Kyle Schwarber became just the 21st player in Major League Baseball history to hit 4 home runs in a game. In the process, he set a Phillies record with 9 RBIs in Philadelphia's 19-4 drubbing of the Atlanta Braves. For Schwarber, he now has a career-high 49 long balls on the season, and look out Cal Raleigh. Schwarber just one behind him for the Major League Baseball home run lead. The Yankees just keep hitting home runs. Cody Bellinger, Jazz Chisholm Jr., and Trent Grisham all went deep as the Bronx Bombers beat up on the White Sox 10-4. The Pirates tried for a series win in St. Louis, but they had to settle for a split after the Cardinals won the final game 4-1. Jordan Walker hit the go-ahead 2-run home run for the Cards. Sloppy were the Mets. They allowed 5 unearned runs, and they lost the game to Miami 7-4. Other winners, the Red Sox, D-backs, Giants, and Astros. Football, a big name traded by the Dallas Cowboys. They have sent pass rusher Micah Parsons to the Green Bay Packers for 2 future draft picks and defensive lineman Kenny Clark. At the U.S. Open Tennis Championships, Americans Coco Gauff and Amanda Anisimova advanced on the women's side. Tommy Paul moved into the 3rd round on the men's side. And in NASCAR, the playoffs begin on Sunday. The round of 16 kicks off in Darlington, South Carolina. Kyle Larson and Will Byron enter as the favorites. That is a look at sports.
All right, Randy, thank you very much. And still to come on the Noon Report for Friday, archaeologists unearth ancient party town. Mark Webster's taking us on a tour of some military ships in Buffalo. And Kevin Williams has that Labor Day weekend forecast right after this.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. Sitting in for John Stone Street, I'm Dr. Glenn Sunshine. This month, 1,460 years ago, was the first recorded encounter with the Loch Ness Monster. According to his biographer Adomnan, Irish monk Columba was conducting missionary work in Scotland in AD 565 when he encountered pagans burying someone who had been killed by a huge aquatic beast. Columba ordered one of his fellow monks to swim across the loch to fetch a boat. The monk quickly obeyed, but his swimming attracted the monster. As it closed in on his colleague, Columba made the sign of the cross and said, "Thou shalt go no further nor touch the man. Go back with all speed." According to Adomnan, quote, "At the voice of the saint, the monster was terrified and fled more quickly than if it had been pulled back with ropes." When the monk returned safely to shore, even the pagans gave glory to God. Even if this particular story is legend, Columba was real and a very important figure in Christian history. Born into a Royal Irish family, he could very well have become High King of Ireland. Instead, he joined the church and received the kind of top-flight education that was distinctive of Irish Christianity. As the Irish church was then centered on monasteries, he then became an abbot. After founding a monastery at Derry, and possibly others, Columba left Ireland to establish a monastery at Iona, an island in the Inner Hebrides of Scotland. From there, Columba, his monks, and their successors evangelized the Picts and other people groups living in Scotland. Later, they moved south into Northumbria and England. Columba often faced opposition from Druids who opposed him with magic and incited local rulers against him. Columba's political skills were tested, but he managed to impress the king of the Northern Picts. This ensured safe conduct as he evangelized that part of Scotland. Columba's monasteries were epicenters of education and the arts. He himself copied manuscripts and likely illuminated them with highly animated art. Archaeologists on Iona believe that they have found remains of his scriptorium. The Book of Kells, the greatest of all Irish illuminated manuscripts, was produced by his successors at Iona and moved to the Columban monastery of Kells to protect it from Viking raids. Today, it sits in the old library at Trinity College in Dublin. The monks of Iona pioneered the development of the Irish high crosses. They also produced exceptionally beautiful metalwork and settings for gems and jewels, including the now-lost cover for the Book of Kells. Columba's support for the arts extended beyond those who were expressly Christian, to the Fílíd, who were professional poets, storytellers, and chroniclers with roots in paganism. In 575, 10 years after Columba's encounter with Nessie, there was a movement to expel the Fílíd from Ireland. Columba came to their defense and a compromise was reached that allowed them to stay in Ireland under some restrictions. Columba himself was a trained poet, with 2 surviving works attributed to him. Columba's approach to ministry exemplified a solid understanding of the gospel of the kingdom. He engaged in evangelism, and he promoted education into the arts. He understood that elements of paganism could be redeemed and used by church and society for positive ends. Rather than isolating from society, his monasteries attempted to demonstrate the lordship of Christ in all facets of life in that time and place. Over time, his monasteries became economic powerhouses that shaped politics in both Ireland and Scotland. Columba's applied faith made an incredible impact on the world of his day and for years after. That's true, even if the story about Nessie isn't. For the Colson Center, I'm Dr. Glenn Sunshine.
All right, Glenn, thank you much. Let's head outside. Kevin Williams.
Here is your Family Life weather forecast for this afternoon. Varying amounts of clouds and sunshine. A brief shower in spots on the cool side, sometimes breezy. High temperatures, 60s and low 70s. Tonight, generally clear and chilly. Low temps in many areas into the 40s. Tomorrow, good deal of sun, some mixed clouds, continued cool. There'll be a brief shower. High temps, 60s and low 70s. Then a good deal of sunshine and warming up a little bit Sunday, Monday, Labor Day, with high temperatures getting well up to the 70s.
Thank you, Kevin. This is the Noon Report for Friday on Family Life.
They stand tall on the Buffalo waterfront, telling an important part of American history to generations new and old.
I've christened the USS The Sullivans.
Welcome to Family Life Staycations, a summertime feature where we highlight great places to visit around the Family Life listening area. I'm Mark Webster, and this week we're off to the Buffalo and Erie County Naval and Military Park. The park is dominated by its three big ships, the USS The Sullivans, the USS Little Rock, and the submarine USS Croker. Our guide is Park Director of Operations and U.S. military veteran Bill Abbott, who says the park story begins with the arrival of two of those big ships.
It started with the USS Little Rock in 1976, and her decommissioning was brought to Buffalo. Part of her mast actually had to be removed so that they could pass under the bridges going through, I believe it was the Welland Canal, to arrive here in Buffalo. And then we acquired, roughly at the same time, the USS The Sullivans, a World War II era destroyer, and then in the 1980s it was the Croker. We also have the Vietnam era PT boat, PTF-17, which was used to drop off special forces in Vietnam, and that is an actual combat veteran vessel. There was an effort recently by volunteers from Northrop Grumman, from Linde, from Home Depot, who did a fantastic job in restoration. We're working on a platform that would make for much more availability for visitors.
One of the challenges is that none of these ships was really built to last a long time. These were quick, turn them out, get them to war, and they weren't really thinking, let's see if this can last 50 years.
The Sullivans in particular, it was designed to last about 20 years, and she's past her 80th birthday.
We'll go ship by ship. They're the big three stars of the show. We'll start with the Sullivans because it certainly has been in the news. People have probably heard of its troubles. Just a quick recap and where the Sullivan stands today.
In April of 2022, she had a nearly catastrophic flooding event, and that's the result of a number of factors, including one that's unique to Buffalo. It's called a seiche. The winds come out of the southwest, they blow northeast, and when that happens, it's literally pushing all of the water into Buffalo.
Like a giant bathtub getting splashed at one end.
Exactly, and we're at that one end. We're at the northeast terminus of the lake. So all that water pushes in, and it raises our ships dramatically quickly. And equally so, when the wind direction changes or it abates, the ships drop just as precipitously as they went up. We believe that the Sullivans came down relatively quickly and came in contact with something on the bottom, which caused about a 4-foot series of gashes in her starboard side.
Almost lost her.
Very closely, yeah.
So in its current temporarily repaired state, the Sullivans is still accessible to park visitors?
As of right now, the main deck and above is accessible.
So let's just talk about the Sullivans, its history, what people can see there, and just what it means to have it here.
It's really an American cultural icon when you think about it. It's part of the stories that we see in movies. Saving Private Ryan, it's that same theme. When I came here, even after my years in the military, I was not as familiar with the story as I should have been. The five Sullivan brothers, they lost their lives on Friday the 13th of November in 1942. Their mother, Alida Sullivan, found out about her son's possible loss by a neighborhood rumor. She didn't even know officially. Ultimately, 10 did survive. There's a letter, and you can find the original handwritten letter. I think it's either in the National Archives or the Library of Congress that Alida wrote. It's 3 pages. It's very emotional, where she first apologized apologizes to the president for being any trouble, which is astonishing. And in that, she writes that she heard a rumor that 5 of her 6 children were lost in a single event. 10 days to 2 weeks later, President Roosevelt wrote back to her confirming her worst fears that the boys were lost. And what's most amazing to me is Alita Sullivan, after that event, turned around and looked for ways to serve other mothers so that they don't suffer any portion of the loss that she did. What type of human being has the capacity to do that? I'm a father. I can't even imagine. And
the greatest generation.
Truly, truly. She moves her concern away from herself and places it on others so that they don't suffer that. There should be monuments all over the country to remind us of what service and sacrifice actually looks like.
All right, let's move over to the Little Rock.
It never saw service in the Second World War. It was completed in 1945, and her primary role in history was as the flagship of the 6th Fleet. So that was more the Cold War. She spent a good deal of the 1950s being rebuilt. So everything from her main deck above was removed from her World War II configuration, where it was a light cruiser. Her job was to slug it out with other ships. She has an armored belt. She could sustain more damage than, say, the Sullivans, which had very thin steel. And then the configuration that you see now was put in place. She was completed and recommissioned in 1960, and she was the command ship, so she commanded all the other vessels that were with her in the Mediterranean through the Cold War. And I've had the privilege to meet some of the sailors that served aboard her and hear some of the stories, some of the face-to-face conflicts, more or less, with the Soviet Navy, very near explosive types of confrontations, really amazing. And then as the flagship, she would have hosted dignitaries, heads of state. Douglas Fairbanks Jr. dined in the Admiral's quarters aboard, Grace Kelly, Prince Rainier, Robert Kennedy, and 2 years ago we completely restored that space to what it looked like at that time. That would have been in the 1960s. We're also getting into other areas of the ship that we've never been in before. Combat Information Center, we've never allowed that to be open to the public. We've just done a great deal of restoration. There's a space called Weapons Control. The ship had been nuclear armed, and at that time they would have used the weapons not as you might imagine where they would launch it and it would hit land targets. It was actually to take out entire squadrons of incoming aircraft. They would do an airborne nuclear detonation and take out bombers or whatever it was. So we're getting into these spaces not to glorify that part of our history, but more as a testament to remind us that at one time we were wise enough to avoid all of what could have followed, and it serves that purpose pretty well.
Still quite relevant today.
Very much so.
And the third star of the show here is the one you can't see easily from a distance, but once you get here, you see the Croaker, the submarine.
A World War II combat vessel, saw service in the South Pacific. As a matter of fact, the fleet that was involved in sinking the Juno, the Croaker sank one of those ships, torpedoed one of the destroyers that had been a part of that fleet. A pretty amazing tie-in between the vessels that we have, our own little fleet here in Buffalo. The Croaker ended up being converted to what they called a hunter-killer, and then in the 1960s to a training vessel. It's really exciting, especially when both vessels end up going to dry docking. We're opening up more of the boat. We're trying to get into the area in the sail where the boat was piloted when it was on the surface. It's a diesel submarine, so it's not like today where a submarine goes under and you don't see it come back up again for months. This would go underwater for brief periods to avoid detection, but the majority of the time it would be on the surface. It would be charging its batteries and operating under diesel power. But it's a great craft. We're doing a great deal of renovation work, and we're looking to bring in technology to better augment our ability to tell those stories on all three vessels. We're working on holograms. We're working on narrative voiceover, so when you enter a space, even if there's not someone in the space, you'll be able to hit a button and a voice will come in and tell you the exciting facts about that space. So this is all new. We've never done that before. Often when you would come through the ships, it was very, very tomb-like and quiet, and we want to improve the guest experience. We're working really hard on that.
So the big three ships, but there's a lot of other interesting memorabilia to see here.
Well, very often people, I'll hear them as they walk by along the sidewalk or the promenade, as we call call it, and they talk about the PTF, and they're under the understanding that it's like a John F. Kennedy's PT-109 from World War II. And actually, this PT boat, PTF-17, was designed to insert special forces onto the coast. So there's some great stories there. We have combat aircraft that are on display on the other side from the ships.
And you must hear a lot of interesting comments.
I served in Iraq. There were people that I served with that didn't make it home. And the reason that I'm here is I want to make sure those stories get told. I had the privilege of meeting some people, children of veterans who are no longer with us, and they've shared stories, and there's no better place in my mind to be able to honor that group of people and to learn about the sacrifice they made for all of us. Those stories need to be told.
Thank you for your time and thank you for your service.
No, I'm grateful. Thank you.
That's Bill Abbott, Director of Operations at the Buffalo and Erie County Naval and Military Park. You can learn more at buffalonavalpark.org. And this has been Family Life Staycations, a weekly summertime feature highlighting great places to visit around the Family Life listening area. Please join us again next summer as we hit the road again for some more Family Life Staycations.
Come on! All right, thank you so much, Mark. Really enjoyed this feature all summer long and kind of hate to see it go for a while, but it will be back next year. Fear not, you can revisit all Mark's staycation destinations online anytime. We've got a variety of platforms to do that. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or our website, familylife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. In the wake of a cold front moving through the area last night and early this morning, we're looking at a cool air mass arriving from high pressure over Lake Superior. The result, though, will be a pretty sunny Labor Day weekend, one that starts very cool but ends gradually warmer. The forecast for this afternoon, varying amounts of clouds and sunshine, a brief shower in spots on the cool side, sometimes breezy. High temperatures, 60s and low 70s. Tonight, generally clear and chilly. Low temps in many areas into the 40s. Tomorrow, good deal of sun, some mixed clouds, continued cool. Could be a brief shower in parts of central New York. High temps, 60s and low 70s. Then a good deal of sunshine and warming up a little bit Sunday, Monday, Labor Day, with high temperatures getting well up into the 70s.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Finally, at noon, archaeologists have just unearthed an ancient party town off the coast of Africa. Correspondent Deborah Rodriguez.
Egyptian officials say archaeologists have lifted the remnants of an ancient sunken city out of the sea off Alexandria. The excavation uncovered statues of human figures, a sphinx, an ancient dock, Roman coins, and tools, including parts of a millstone that all date back more than 2,000 years. An expert at Oxford says ancient texts show Canopus was a religious center and also a party town, known for all sorts of licentious behavior before it was gradually swallowed up over the centuries by earthquakes and rising waters.
That's Deborah Rodriguez reporting. And that's our world, the world we live in. Friday, August 29th. Have a wonderful and safe Labor Day weekend. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.